I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Daniel Jones looks left, great protection, fires downfield. Again, it's Warren with the grab. Went up high to bring it in, and he's down to the 11-yard line.
It's impressive. He's an old-school throwback, freaking baller is what he is.
First play of the second quarter. Daniel Jones flies it right side, and it's caught at the goal line. Touchdown for the Colts, and it's Michael Pittman Jr. A 27-yard, beautifully placed pass by Daniel Jones. Two backs in the backfield with Tua Tagovailoa. Play action, drops the throw. Here comes the rush by the Colts. The ball is out, and it squirts right to a blue shirt, and the Colts have another takeaway into plus territory. Kenny Moore, the second, gets the sack. Jones under center, ball on the right hash this time. Two receivers go left, including Drew Ogletree. Taylor in the backfield. And here's a quarterback sneak by Daniel Jones. He's in! Yes, sir! The quarterback finishes the deal. Another touchdown for the Colts. Tua backs the pass. Rolling to his right. Sets up. Delivers over the middle. Picked off. Latu with the interception. Gets up off the mat. He's running upfield across the 40-yard line, and he's pushed out of bounds in front of the Colts sideline, and his teammates are mobbing him. Jones, quarterback keeper again. This time he slides in. Touchdown on a quarterback keeper by Daniel Jones.
Great team win. Everybody in that locker room, every coach, every player, the preparation that goes into it to play the way we did, complimentary football on both sides of it. I'm excited for the city, this organization, to get this first win at home. With Mr. Irsay going to the Ring of Honor, it was only fitting to get that done today.
Follow me. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hold on. We will rock you. We will rock you.
So that's how it sounded. That is Jim Irsay, of course, from a couple of years ago, leading the victory celebration for the Indianapolis Colts. Matt Taylor on the radio call as the Colts yesterday in dominating fashion, 33-8. Streak is over, Eddie Garrison. The streak is over, baby. That is right. Colts are 1-0. And the last time we said that, it was, 12 seasons ago, 11. It gets weird because there was a tie in there, so you can't
2013.
say 11 straight losses. But nonetheless, Colts snapped the streak, and there is a lot to unpack from yesterday in what was a glorious day in Indianapolis. Roof open. You couldn't see 90% of what was happening on the football field if you're watching on television, but that's okay. Colts get a big, big win, and there were a lot of stars. You heard Shane Steichen talking afterwards about it. And actually, Eddie, I'd like to think that on this program, the way that I'd like to be known, I hereby have an official proclamation and declaration, okay? My name is Jake Query.
Hey, Jake. How's it going? I'm Eddie Garrison.
Hello, Eddie. This is Query and Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Eddie Garrison you are the president of the company, is that correct?
Yes, that is right. I am the president. You are the chairman of the board.
Are the employees of this company, and I would hereby, as the CEO of Query and Company, like to make the following proclamation. Shane Steichen yesterday was describing Daniel Jones, but I would like to just go ahead and steal that moniker. Occasionally, not all the time, but occasionally, as the elder statesman of this program, I would like to simply be known as the old school throwback frickin' baller. That's what I am. I'm the old school throwback freaking baller. I don't know, I guess I'm kind of old school. I'm old, so I guess that makes me old school. And I'm a little bit of a throwback because, you want to talk Art Schlichter, Frank Kush, Mike Pagel era, bada boom, I'm your guy. You want to talk Rick Smits, Mark Jackson, Derek McKee, bada boom, I'm your guy. You want to talk the triplets at Purdue and Alford and Darryl Thomas at Indiana, bada boom, I'm your guy. But I'm also a freaking baller. I can talk very easily about Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs and DJ Giddens and the 2025 Colts. I can talk Tyrese Halliburton. I can talk Andrew Nimhard. You name it, I can go there too. But today we're going to focus on the yesterday and the now. And the Colts are 1-0, and here is the thing that I was thinking about last night at 2:38 in the morning with a random nocturnal query brain dropping, okay? Thank you. I thought about a couple of things. Number one, this show we like to think of as one that is a celebration Monday after a Colts win.
I thought you were going to say a dog and pony show.
It is a dog and pony show. This we know. And it is an overreaction Monday in the NFL, which we will get to coming up later in the program. I will present a couple of overreaction statements, and Eddie, you tell me whether you think they're overreaction or something that is actually going to stick, and we're going to find out it to be fact over the course of this year's NFL season. But we've talked about, for example, the number of female listeners we have on this program.
27 of them.
27 of them. We now have gone international as well. We already knew about our Australian contingency, right?
Yeah.
That makes it somewhat international, but it's not Pacer season. I think Michael only listens for Pacer season. Over the weekend, I'm walking into the show at Oasis, and I hear somebody yell out to me because I'm by myself. They took sympathy. And it was a quartet of folks from Vancouver, Canada, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Some of them had grown up in Toronto. Some of them were actually from Alberta, but they now live in Vancouver. And they took me in as part of their group, and they are now in Disneyland as part of their ventures across Southern California, and they just texted me to tell me they're listening to the program.
What was your initiation?
What's that?
What was your initiation to get into the group?
I had to say A 6 times.
Really?
Yep, I had to explain. And they actually said to me, within 10 minutes of talking to them, they found out about Shannon and then found out how long we've been dating, and they told me that if we get married, they're coming for the wedding. So we have 4 Canadians that will be here for the wedding and a couple of Australians.
Cool.
But let's get to, so hello to Mitch and gang in Southern California, but let's get to yesterday, the epiphany that I had in the middle of the night. If you are listening to my voice right now, you are most likely not an NFL head coach. You are an insurance adjuster. You're a teacher. You're over-the-road sales, whatever it might be. I'm a radio host. None of us are an NFL head coach. There are only 32 of those in the United States of America. And occasionally an NFL head coach makes a decision that gets critiqued by an insurance adjuster and a radio host and a teacher and a salesperson. And more often than not, those people are all coming together to band over the obvious. Because it's so obvious that even those that don't work in the NFL can see it. And then occasionally a coach makes a decision where once you see the proof in the pudding, you say, that's why that guy's an NFL coach, and I'm an insurance adjuster or an over-the-road salesman or a teacher or a radio host. And one game does not a season make. One quarter does not a game make. But yesterday, what we saw was this. Shane Steichen's decision to start Daniel Jones was completely justified over the course of that game, and it showed why he is paid the big bucks to make those decisions and analysis, and why he, as a head coach, is entrusted by the organization to be able to see the little things and forecast the things that are going to help the football team. And yesterday, what we saw was this. And I realize that discussing Anthony Richardson becomes tiresome. And I realized that yesterday, part of that game, one of the storylines of it was it didn't take long in the game before you realized that you had not thought about Anthony Richardson. And nothing against Anthony Richardson. But the conversation of the quarterback battle, at least for now, has been completely silenced. And the reason is because of this. The Colts went out in the offseason and made 2 moves. Chris Ballard, who we have criticized a lot, gets a lot of credit for these 2 moves. The first of which was obvious. Drafting Tyler Warren. That was an obvious selection. As you're watching the draft, you're saying to yourself, I can't believe Tyler Warren is going to fall into the Colts' lap. This is the perfect player for what they need. And what did we say about the tight end position for the last 2 years? Like, I just saw Jason Hammer in the hallway, right? And Jason Hammer said, I'm so glad they finally have a tight end. Not one of these, like, we're going to try to convert this basketball player. Not somebody that, like, a true – Jack Doyle was a great tight end, don't get me wrong. But a true defense-bending tight end, a guy that every time that he lines up, the defense has to have eyes on him. And that's what Tyler Warren is. And we knew that going into it. But in order to get Tyler Warren to be Tyler Warren, they just needed a quarterback that, as Chris Ballard said of Anthony Richardson last night, he's the guy that can go back and, falling on his back heel, just throw a wing and a prayer and put it right in the breadbasket in stride to Alec Pierce from 62 yards out. He can do those things. And you go to games partially because you're waiting for that explosion, for that to happen. But what the Colts did in the offseason was realize that you win games not by living and relying on the exception, but by establishing the rule. In life in general, you can live by the rule or you can live by the exception. And in the NFL, Anthony Richardson got to the point where the big plays were the exception and the rule was inconsistency. And you got to live by the rules more often than not. And when they did that, they obviously were inconsistent. And so they went with a guy that they said, you know what, we need to find a guy where the rule is just methodical, routine stuff. Making the layups, to quote Chris Ballard, making the layups. The Colts don't need Steph Curry offense. They need, like, Andrew Nembhard offense. Methodical and to the point. And Daniel Jones was that guy yesterday, and Tyler Warren is the one that facilitates it. Because once you get Warren established, as they did early, very early, he ended up with 7 catches, but he had 3 of them in the first, 2 drives, whatever. When you establish him early, then all of a sudden defenses have to be aware of where he is, and he becomes, A, the safety net for Jones, but B, that then allows Jones. Now, there were times where Jones, I thought, through his reads, either held on too long or went too early and didn't go all the way through his checkdowns. But for the most part, he hit the layups. 22 of 29. Didn't turn the ball over. They scored on every possession. You saw that stat. I mean, it's well out there and well documented by now in terms of scoring 7 times with the football, 7 opportunities of offensive possession, and they scored on all 7, or whatever the number was. But either way, they were unbelievably efficient offensively, and I truly believe that is because they went back to the basics of living by the rule instead of relying on the exception. And so as a result, they get to win. Now, there was plenty of praise and back-patting that can go around. Obviously, defensively, Lou Anarumo, and it's a shame that I am nearly 15 minutes into today's show without mentioning Lou Anarumo, because that defense was outstanding. It was great. They were unpredictable at times, but they were sound. They were about to pitch the first shutout in 4 years in franchise history, the last one coming against Houston, against Davis Mills, by the way. But that defense yesterday was outstanding. Tua looked completely lost. That entire offense looked completely lost. Now, Eddie, do you remember we had Chris Perkins on? Was that on Thursday?
Yes.
When we had Chris Perkins on Thursday, one of the things that he said, and I thought it was interesting, and I kept hearing it in my head as I was watching the game, was towards the end of that interview when I asked Chris Perkins, who's the beat writer for the Dolphins from the South Florida Sentinel, and I mentioned the streak of how long it had been since the Colts had won an opening game. And he said, well, they got a real problem if they can't get that done this Sunday, because this is a team in complete disarray. He's like, this team has 52 guys going in 50, I'm paraphrasing here, but 52 guys going in 52 different directions, and They have a quarterback that is nobody knows exactly what he can do, and they know what he can do, but whether or not he's going to be able to do it now because of just the injury history, and you have these weapons like Waddle and Hill that are obviously great weapons, but they have an inability to get them in space, and they don't exactly know, who knows who their running backs are. We have no idea if they're going to have any ground game. They look that way. I'm taking nothing away from the Colts because the Colts did yesterday what teams are supposed to do. If, in fact, we find out that Miami is, instead of the Dolphins, you wonder if they're actually the Carp because they're going to be stuck towards the bottom all year long. And I don't know. We won't know for a while whether or not that's the case, but it is entirely possible that we will look back around Halloween time or the time when Eddie legitimately should be drinking pumpkin spice stuff. And,
not today.
Huh?
Not today. By the way, when we go to break, I'm going to get some Java House coffee.
See, I got you some. What'd you think?
It's very good.
It's smooth, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Amazingly smooth, they call it.
Very efficient in terms of make time as well.
The peel and pour, right? Bada boom, you're good to go. So, but when you have teams like that, if in fact Miami is a win that you're going to look back on and go, yeah, we thought that was a big deal in week 1, but that team is terrible. If that's the case, then all you can ask is that you go out, take a lead, and do like, say, what Indiana did a year ago during their year with Curt Cignetti, and that is get a lead against a bad team and never relinquish control of the game. And the Colts didn't do that. They controlled that entire game. They were clearly the superior team. They did everything that you would want. They did what good teams do. And if they are good, and we don't know yet. But through week 1, they look good because they went against an inferior opponent, and they absolutely, from the get-go, took control of that game and never relinquished it. And it came in a variety of ways. It came through the fact that they passed the ball with efficiency. It came to the fact that they ran the ball with efficiency at times. It came from the fact that defensively they were unpredictable. They got takeaways, and they had the Dolphins on their heels at all times. It came from the fact that each time there was an opportunity, they went with the route that got them points. They did everything that you should do. And, yes, they were likely inspired in what was a very special day for the franchise and for this city of honoring Jim Irsay and having the players back for the Ring of Honor and seeing Edgerrin James and seeing Peyton Manning and seeing Dallas Clark and seeing Jeff Saturday and seeing Tarek Glenn and seeing Robert Mathis and seeing Reggie Wayne and seeing all of the greats back and Bill Polian and setting a tone and setting an example. And that's what this city and this franchise deserves. And for Jim Irsay, that's what he always strived for, was a team that this city and this fan base can be proud of in the way that they go out and conduct their business. Does that mean it's going to happen all year long? No. But it is the right step in the right direction. And again, I think it came from the fact that they just went back to the basics and they made the layups. And I've been critical of Chris Ballard. We've been critical of Shane Steichen, for that matter, and we were very hesitant on Daniel Jones. So far, so good. And kudos to the organization, to the Irsay daughters, for all collectively paying tribute to their father, their owner, their boss, in a fashion that was not only appropriate in terms of the words that were said and the fashion in which he was celebrated, but then also appropriate in the fact and the form of the way that they played the game. Because they played the game yesterday the way that any owner should want his team to play, with the respect to the game and doing it the right way. It was a wonderful day yesterday at Lucas Oil Stadium, and it is just one game, but it is a celebratory Monday. Now, we'll get into other stuff over the course of the show today. As a matter of fact, Don Fischer is going to join us coming up about 10 minutes from now. We'll talk about Indiana's win over the weekend, and what do we know about the Hoosiers? Because they absolutely dominated Kennesaw State, and now Indiana State next on the schedule, and then it gets real. because they got Illinois, they got Oregon coming up. I mean, it gets real for Indiana. But Indiana did what the Colts did. When you have an inferior opponent, you need to come out, take control, and set tone over the course of the day. They did exactly that on Saturday.
Bachman-Turner overdrive?
You know, they had Bachman-Turner overdrive at the Colts-Ravens game in 1996 at the RCA Dome, and everybody was super excited about it. And they're like, Bachman-Turner overdrive is going to perform live. And all they did was play the opening, 9 notes of taking care of business during every timeout on the sidelines. And after, the first quarter, it was just like, dun, 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 dun. And everybody's like, wait, we just did this. Last time out, we just did this. What are we doing here? Tony Siragusa was running around doing the flap, the goose dance. It was something, man.
It was just a great weekend for Indianapolis sports, right? For Indiana sports, nonetheless. You had the Colts winning. You had the Fever clinching a playoff spot. You had IU dominating, and you had Purdue 2-0 for the first time since, 1916?
Yeah. How about, hey, listen, and Purdue again, Eddie. Are these impressive wins? I don't know, but they're doing what you need them to do, right? How was your weekend overall? The Fever, that was impressive for the Fever, too, because they had to dig down deep, right?
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much dominated after the first quarter. They were down 1 after the first. They ended up, cruising. They were up 30 at one point in that game against Washington yesterday. They're in the playoffs. They will be the 6th or the 7th seed. It will largely depend on if Golden State has to do to lock up the 6th seed is win one of their next 2 games, and they'll be 6. Indiana will be 7. Who they play right now still to be determined. It's very tight up at the top for that 2nd seed in the WNBA.
By the way, I have to throw this in there. Do you think, Eddie, what I did on Saturday afternoon was interesting or weird? Or do you know what I did on Saturday afternoon? I told you what I was going to try to do on Saturday afternoon.
I saw it on Twitter that you were successful in trying.
Okay. So is that interesting or is that weird?
I think it's interesting, but for later in the show.
Well, yes, I'm not talking about for right now. It's not the lead, but is it interesting or is it weird? Or both?
It's a combination.
Deep down, were you envious at all?
Envious? No.
Let me tell you one thing that I want to get Don Fischer's thoughts on when we have him on. Last year, do you remember when last year Indiana went to the Rose Bowl?
Yes.
Do you remember what Curt Cignetti said about the Rose Bowl?
Just an old stadium or something like that?
He's like, we're going into a really old stadium, and we're going to go and try to win a football game.
Kick some ass?
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing what he said, yes. And everybody's like, okay, listen, I had never been to the Rose Bowl. Saturday was my first venture to the Rose Bowl. And there's an element of it about the Rose Bowl. I have an observation about the Rose Bowl that I'm curious if Don Fischer has this, if he will agree or disagree with me. So when we talk about Indiana football and, last year, their trip to the Rose Bowl, which was this time a year ago, it was very early in the year. I have a Rose Bowl observation that I'm going to ask Don. And then we will get into what the Hoosiers did on Saturday and where that, if in fact this is the right measure or tone to get themselves ready for what is then a gauntlet in the Big Ten season with the domination of Kennesaw State, Indiana State up next, and then it gets real. I'm not saying those, no disrespect to those two teams, but the conference a different level. Don Fischer, voice of the Hoosiers, joins us next. Dominating win for Indiana over Kennesaw State on Saturday. It is Indiana State up next. Joining us now on the program, Don Fischer is the voice of the Hoosiers. Don, before we get to what happened on Saturday, I wanted to get your perspective on this because I think we talked about this last year, but I was new to the fray here, and it was eye-opening for me. Last year when Indiana went to UCLA, was that your first experience being in the Rose Bowl?
That's the first and only experience I've had at the Rose Bowl, yes.
So I want you to basically I'm not twisting your arm to back me up on this, but I'm going to ask you to back me up on this. Now, I realize that you would have been up in the press box because you were calling the game. Right. And it's a beautiful venue. I mean, it goes without saying the Rose Bowl is a historic, with a beautiful backdrop and the sun. I mean, all of that. But I went to a show there on Saturday. I had never been to the Rose Bowl. And, Don, the first thing I thought to myself was, in 1922, it appears that every American was 5'8" and 110 pounds. Because the seats and the concourse and everything, I was like, what is going on here? I mean, I sat down and it was like I was seated I felt like William Perry sitting in Coach on an RJ flight. It was incredible. Now, did you notice does any of that make sense from your observation of the Rose Bowl?
No.
Yeah, you're up in the press box, right?
I was in the press box. I never sat in a seat there. I walked down on the field at some point. I can't remember exactly when, but it was before the ball game and before we went on the air. I just walked down there just to walk on the turf and to kind of memorialize my opportunity to be at the Rose Bowl. But I never really looked at the seats or sat down in one, so I have no idea of your perspective. But I trust me, I understand that because what are you, 6'4", 6'5", something like that?
Yeah, 6'4", yeah.
Yeah, so I could understand why a long-legged person that walked in there and had to sit down in those seats probably would have a little bit of a problem.
I mean, it's obvious. It goes without saying, though, that a place like that, you do look around and you just think, man, there's been a lot of history in this place. I mean, it's cool to be there for certain, right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, it was. And here's the only negative for our experience out there. It was so hazy that day that we played there. The sun was out, but it was really hazy, and you could barely see the mountains in the background, especially from our venue, because we're up above, and we can see over the top of the stadium out at the mountains that were out there, and they were almost obliterated by this haze. And that was the only negative, because I know had it been a clear day, it would have been an absolutely beautiful sight.
It is. I mean, and the other thing that's odd about it is the fact that, and you forget this when you're there, Don, but I mean, it's on a good day, it's 40 minutes from the UCLA campus. You know what I mean? If you were a student at UCLA, and there are a lot of great things about being a student at UCLA, but it would be difficult to get over to go to the game, right? It's different than Memorial Stadium where you got to walk to 17th Street. It's just different.
Yeah. And on top of that, the UCLA program was struggling or had been struggling for a while at football, and there wasn't a big crowd there that day. In fact, the Indiana fans by far outnumbered the UCLA fans that were there at the end of the ball game. I mean, it wasn't even close.
Yeah, and I get it. It's a bucket list thing for a lot of programs, and especially now with the Big Ten, you will see that. All right, let's get to Saturday. I thought Indiana, obviously, it goes without saying. I mean, they did what you want a team to do when you were going against what you perceive to be an inferior opponent in Kennesaw State, but I think the thing that was encouraging from Indiana's standpoint was they got a lot of players involved offensively. I mean, obviously Mendoza in throwing the ball around for it, and from the ground game as well. That's the advantage of a game like that, Don. But do you think that Indiana, was it part of the game plan to just get as many people as possible involved and perhaps to try to do the same against Indiana State?
Well, I can't say. I mean, here's the thing about Curt Cignetti. He believes that you've got to do what you got to do, and he wanted to make sure this ball club in the three quarters, for the most part, that they played, and they actually played into the fourth quarter, the starters we're talking about. He wanted to make sure those guys were doing all the things that he's asked them to do, because he believes you've got to play a full 60-minute football game. You just can't go out there and, go through the motions in that last quarter. I think that probably what pleased him as much as anything, it was the fact that they played the entire 60 minutes. It didn't matter who was in the ball game. It was the fact that they went out there and busted it the entire time that they played in this contest. And it was everybody on the field that came into the ball game that did exactly the same thing. That really pleased him in that sense. But the thing that I think was most impressive to me was the improvement that was made from week 1 to week 2 in almost every phase. I mean, yes, they played really good defense the first ball game, except for 2 plays. And the offense struggled a little bit, especially in the red zone, as we all know. And all of that changed in game 2. So those improvements were made. The emphasis from the coaching staff obviously came through with what those guys were able to do on the field.
Don, it's interesting. Going all the way back, when you back in the I'll use the air quotes here, of the old days, when you'd be watching a college football game and they would just roll the scores at the bottom of the screen of elsewhere around the country, right? And you would see the Ohio States and the Texases and the Michigans that were, especially in the first month of the season, beating people 56-3 and 77-10 and whatever else. And you realize that those teams, it's just a matter of never relinquishing any control of a game. You get a lead, and then you just compound it and you compound it. And last year, that was Indiana's. Even in the game that they lost to Notre Dame, that team never gave up. They stayed to task the entire whistle to whistle. What is it about Curt Cignetti that has allowed for that just entire mindset to become now a staple of this program?
The minute that Curt Cignetti stepped onto the playing field, whether it was practice, spring ball, whatever the case may be, this man knows exactly what he wants done and how it should be done. He told me the very first interview I did with him, he learned more in the years that he worked with Nick Saban about how to run a football program than at any other time. And he had been an assistant coach for many years leading up to his first experience as a head coach at Indiana University, Pennsylvania. But his last 4 years of his assistant's positions was spent with Nick Saban. And he said in that 4-year period of time, he learned how to run a football program the way it should be run. And I don't think he's varied his philosophy or anything about what he learned in those 4 years since he came to become a head coach. I think it's been that way ever since. That's what he preaches. He preaches it to his assistant coaches, and he preaches it to his players, and he doesn't vary from it at all.
And yet you could see it. You can see it just from one possession to the next. They just stay in control. Fernando Mendoza is a guy that, after week 1, I think that he himself had said that he wanted to find just kind of more consistency and that he felt like he left something out there in week 1. What areas did you see improvement, Don, from game 1 to game 2 at the quarterback play?
Decision-making was a big factor, non-factor, I guess I should say, in that first game. I don't think his decision-making was very good. I don't think he was reading the defenses very well. And I'm not sitting here saying that he didn't do it at times. He just didn't do it consistently in that first game of the season. Part of that, more than likely, is just the newness of a program, of the playbook, all of the things that you're dealing with in that first game. And, of course, dealing with the fact that you're playing on the home field, a bunch of new people that don't know anything about you. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself in that contest, to really perform. And you know as well as I do, the great athletes, when they do that, they don't perform as well as they're capable of. And I think Fernando dealt with that a little bit, and I don't think there was any question he made a dramatic improvement in those areas, especially in game 2.
But by the way, if I'm not mistaken, Don, because we've talked to you about this before, your son, the head coach at Edgewood, correct?
Mm-hmm.
They got a big win Friday night, did they not? Am I correct in that?
Yep, they beat South Putnam, a team that has just absolutely destroyed them the first 2 years. My son was the head coach, and this year is his third season. He's been able to build this program a little bit at Edgewood High School in Ellisville, and since that time, since they started this season, I knew they'd be better. I just didn't know how much better they would be, and at this point, they're 3-0. and they won over South Putnam, a team that had just killed them the last 2 years, whether it was at home or on the road. And it was a huge win for the players. He's got a young team. He's still got a bunch of juniors, some sophomores that are competing, and he's got 2 or 3 or 4 seniors that are real factors on the team as well. But it's basically still a very young team. And being 3-0 right now and building that confidence after 2 full seasons of having maybe a total of 3 or 4 wins, that's big for these kids.
Yeah, no, I saw that, and I knew that was big because of the reasons you mentioned, and I thought that was cool. I wanted to point that out because that was a cool win for them in overtime, I think, on Friday night, right?
Double overtime, and the fact that they've had a 20 to 12 lead going into like the last 5 minutes of the game and let it slip out of their hands. It didn't do much for the ulcer that my son's probably developing as we speak. But that said, they really came back, and they did everything they had to in the final 2 minutes and the overtime periods to get the ball game back under control and being able to win it. So it was I know it was fun for him. I didn't get to see it. I was emceeing the Hall of Fame banquet at IU on Friday night. Therefore, I didn't get to see it. But the last couple of minutes, my wife and I were sitting at Malibu Grill and listening to my grandson explain to me what was going on in the field, and it was pretty chaotic, to say the least.
That's pretty cool, though. That's pretty cool. All right, lastly, Don, before we let you go, as the Hoosiers get set for Indiana State, is there an area that you still have question marks about this Indiana football team? You know, is there anything that you're looking for where you say that's the one thing heading before they get into the Big Ten play that I really want to get a better idea of where they are?
Well, I think that the most important thing right now, Jake, at least from the standpoint of Indiana, is that these guys continue to make the improvements in just about every area. But the one thing that I'm still concerned about a little bit is the depth in this team, especially at 2 or 3 positions, of which I will not speak since I don't need the opposition to hear anything we're saying in that regard. But there are a couple of spots where I think depth is a real critical factor, and injuries could really devastate that. So we'll just have to wait and see. But honestly, Jake, I think this team is making the kind of progress we saw 1 year ago. The first game of the season was very much like last year's first game, and game 2 was the same thing. Indiana comes up and puts big numbers on the scoreboard and really executes very well, and that's a real critical thing, as you know.
By the way, Friday night, everybody, this week's game, Friday night, Indiana State and Indiana from Memorial Stadium. Pregame getting underway at 5:30 on this radio station, and then you will hear Don on the call with kickoff at 6:30 on Friday night, as Don will be calling the game, and then afterwards getting the recap from his grandson on what happened with Edgewood as they try to go 4-0. Don, appreciate it, man, as always.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Appreciate it.
Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. All right, we come back. We're going to do a little overreaction Monday of the NFL. I got a couple observations, and then we will determine whether that is overreaction or, in fact, could be something that we see over the course of the season in this week 1 of the National Football League, and a dandy last night to cap things off for the Sunday activity before tonight's game as well. We'll do it on the other side. Coming up about 10 minutes from now. It's Overreaction Monday. We always do this, do we not? Especially at the beginning of the season in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for example, Indiana Jones is the new savior of Colts football. I do think, it's interesting. Just before we were on, there was a caller that called in on national radio that was a Giants fan that was like, look at what Daniel Jones did in Indianapolis yesterday. Maybe if you gave him protection and weapons, he's not as bad as he's made out to be, so to speak. And there's probably some truth to that. He is Daniel Jones about to put together a Josh Allen season? Probably not. But again,
boy, could you imagine?
Yeah. This offense, though, when you look at the players they have, and notably Tyler Warren, they have good weapons on offense. They do. Is it the greatest show on turf? Maybe not, but they have good weapons. And this offense, again, Daniel Jones hits the layups, which is what Chris Ballard kept saying he needed Anthony Richardson to do. And this offense is set up it's like a motion offense. You just need to make a quick pass and screen. You don't need to come down and be hitting Steph Curry threes and Caitlin Clark threes. And Richardson is a wonderful talent in terms of his ability to always have you wondering when the big play is about to be uncorked. But I just think when you look at the weapons they have right now, just rhythm, passing, and accuracy in the intermediary is what they need, and Jones did that yesterday. All right, here we go. Couple of overreaction statements on a Monday. Eddie, I'll give the statement. I want you then to tell me, and folks can chime in as well via the text line.
317-239-1070.
Thank you. You can also text me independently, which I know a lot of people do. Or
tweet at the show at Query_Company.
Okay, here we go.
Just don't text and drive. That's all we ask.
The first overreaction Monday. Aaron Rodgers is back to the form that made him a winner in Green Bay.
Is there a middle here?
What's your middle?
That it's not an overreaction, but it's not an underreaction either.
So it's just a fair statement?
Okay, yeah, fair statement, yeah. If you look at how he performed down the stretch last year with the Jets, it was like, okay, this guy still's got it, and yesterday he went out there and proved it. I don't think he's,
Did you
MVP
see what he said
type.
afterwards?
Oh, yeah. He was pretty much just trying to stick it to the Jets because they didn't think he could play still.
I hope every member of the Jets organization notices that I still can play, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Potential overreaction statement number 2. The Chargers are a Super Bowl contender.
Overreaction. I need to see Justin Herbert win a playoff game first.
Okay. So that's an overreaction. They look good, right?
They did look good.
I know it's obviously not on Sunday, but they look good. Okay. The Green Bay Packers are the best team in the NFC.
Man, that's tough. They're also the youngest team in the NFL. I will go overreaction. I think that still belongs to the Eagles.
Okay. How about this one that was texted in by Chris? Is this an overreaction? The Colts have a Super Bowl level roster and an AFC South division winning capable quarterback.
I think half of that is not an overreaction. I think half of that is.
Correct. I think it's accurate to say that they may have a quarterback that can win them the division. I don't think they have a Super Bowl level roster, right?
Yeah, I would agree. They don't have the pass rusher. Like, even though they get 3 sacks yesterday, I mean, 2 of them are coming from your DBs on blitzes.
Okay, is this an overreaction statement? The window is closing on the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, not an overreaction. Yes, that is an overreaction.
Okay, because we do this every year, do we not?
I need to see the body.
We throw dirt on them too early?
I need to see the body before we start having that conversation.
Okay. Whose body are you looking for, by the way?
I don't know.
Okay.
That's a good question.
Is this an overreaction? The New England Patriots are stuck in neutral and are not going to take a step forward this year.
It's one we can't. Too soon to say.
So that's an overreaction. Is that an overreaction? The Patriots. You're saying
I gotta stick with my my guys, I guess, right? I predicted them to be that sleeper playoff team, so I gotta stick with them.
Okay, is this an overreaction? The Miami Dolphins are one of the 3 worst teams in the league.
They are going to be that team where everything implodes. I forget which one of our guests said it, but they were right on the money.
Chris Perkins, the beat writer for them, right?
Did we do that exercise with him? I can't remember. I didn't know if it was Matt Verderam, Stephen Holder, or Charles Davis.
No, but nobody said specifically. I don't think they said the Dolphins, right? Maybe.
I think Verderam did say the Dolphins. I'd have to go back and listen. Yeah.
I mean, listen, from a coaching standpoint, it's over, right?
Oh yeah, without question. Without question.
I mean, should they have made that move? Did Mike McDaniel get one extra year? Even I know that at one time he was like the super fun kind of, genius in the lab, sprint off the field at halftime, unique coach with this different vibe and like, oh man, like, there's just something, but it feels like now that has swung the other way to the point of it's going to be tough to get that back. He looks absolutely like a guy that has lost that locker room. And yesterday, and I mean this as no disrespect to the Colts or to undersell what the Colts did, because the Colts yesterday, that was as efficient and as well-rounded and as balanced a performance from the Indianapolis Colts as we have seen in some time. And maybe it was the Colts that made Miami that hapless, but Miami looked completely lost. Okay, and then lastly, not named the Dallas Cowboys, the franchise that after a month or so, it's like, here comes the drama. There was a fight in the locker room. Supposedly this guy's unhappy. There's tension with the coaches. And it's like, you know what? This is the Colts bringing in Jeff Saturday, mid-year level, total dysfunction, and it's just a year that is wasted. That franchise is who?
The team that'll be in Indianapolis on Sunday, not named the Colts.
Okay, that's Matt Verderam, right?
He said the Dolphins.
Kudos to him, man. Because it looks so far like he was right. I mean, it's 1 week, right? Again.
Boy, they looked terrible.
To tab it immediately as saying that means that Matt Verderam was right, maybe that's an overreaction. But so far, it certainly feels that way. Mike Chappell's next. Mike Chappell is the dean of Colts writers with WXIN, Fox 59, and CBS 4. He joins us now on the program to talk about yesterday's Colts win in dominating fashion over the Miami Dolphins. The streak is over, and the Colts are 1-0. And, Mike, I'll begin with the simplistic question off the top, and I know that we don't definitively know this answer just yet. But do you think yesterday, at its purest form, told us more about the Colts or the Dolphins?
Probably the Colts. This is how they want to play, and if they play this way, it works. It maybe not will be flashy, although there were a handful of big plays, but no, I think it kind of told us about the Colts. I think Miami didn't play well at all, but I came away pretty impressed with how the Colts played.
Do you think, Mike, that which to you was more encouraging? The yes factor of this is why they drafted Tyler Warren, or the yes factor of this is why they hired Lou Anarumo? Which one of those two was a bigger oomph for you?
Probably Lou. He's got to handle the whole defense, and we saw 3 takeaways, and I mean, my goodness, we saw Latu get an interception on a drop. Probably that more. Now again, all these are one game snippets, but I was really impressed by, again, keep in mind that Tua led the league in completion percentage last year. He played pretty good the last half of the year, and he was lost out there. So that's a credit to Lou.
I thought the one thing about the defense, Chap, and you tell me if you agree with this, they seem to kind of come from all areas. And one of the things that I think we knew going into it, and I'm curious, I guess I would ask it in this way. It seemed to me like the Colts yesterday were able to keep Miami off kilter with unpredictability of kind of disguising looks and running like different junk formations that then all of a sudden they'd come from a different area. Now, did they actually do that, or was I thinking that based on power of suggestion because I'd been told that's what a Lou Anarumo defense looks like?
No, that's what we saw from Lou in Cincy. You think you're getting this, he gives you this. And the biggest thing you can do to an offense is get them thinking that they see one thing and they get something else. I think the interception from Latu, I don't think Tua thought he would be down in the secondary. So really, I liked it. Now, we don't need to see Denver come in here and blow the doors off of them, which I don't think that's going to happen. But you pay for Mooney Ward and you pay for Cam Bynum, and they both make plays. They just do. And we get to see Cam Bynum's silly whatever that was. Maybe you guys know what that was. I don't.
I saw it, Chap. You ready for this? I'm going to be the young kid in the room here. I saw that there apparently was a viral TikTok video of a guy doing that form of a dance that Cam Bynum did. I don't know what you'd call it, like the lay down caterpillar. I have no idea what the name of it is, but right. There was a funny looking dude that did a dance like that on TikTok, and apparently that's the origin.
Well, and that can get overblown maybe, but if you've got a guy taking the ball away 6-7 times, have fun, knock yourself out. It was interesting that he wanted to do that one by himself. He called everybody off.
Right.
But this is what you wanted. And then when we get over to Tyler Warren, I mean, that's what you got him for. Whatever it was, 6 or 7 for 71 or 70.
7 for 75, I think, right?
Yeah. And you can just see where he's going to get more around the goal line. And I'm trying to think the last time Shane Steichen had a tight end that he could direct plays to. I mean, really. This is to take nothing away from Jack Doyle, but when you've got the middle of the field to attack, it's really encouraging, and I think what the fans need to prepare themselves for is quality over quantity. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to pile up 70, 80 receptions, 1,000 yards. I just don't see it, which is not a bad thing if you can convince your room that's the way to go. You know, and then you get Alec Pierce with the shot down the field, so he's happy. And JT, it's funny. I think he had 71 yards, and that's how he's gonna nickel and dime his way to about 1,300 yards.
By the way, do we know if Jonathan Taylor had lingering effect from injury that could last into next week?
No, I didn't. I thought he was not playing because they had the big lead.
Well, I mean, yes, I get that, but I'm saying, you know, was there clarification on whether or not he was hurt?
I don't know. Full disclosure, I wasn't at the game. I tested positive for COVID, and I feel absolutely awful. So the game helped a little bit, but I don't think so. I didn't hear anything like that. But this is just the perfect offense for what they want to do. They'll take shots. They want to move the chains. What was it, the stat that they scored all 7 possessions of the first time since 1977?
Right.
Which is really incredible.
By the way, Chap, I appreciate you coming on. I apologize. I didn't know that you were under the weather.
Oh, I figured you'd badmouth me if I didn't come on, so here I am.
we badmouth you when you do come on. No.
I know, so maybe I should have just stayed away. But hey, I can deal with it.
Okay, well, and I appreciate it, and I won't keep you much longer then, based on that, because But I do want to get to a couple of other things, and that is the Tyler Warren factor. I know that it's one game. I don't want to be overreactionary. But to your point, it's been a long time. Dallas Clark would probably be the last that fits what I'm about to say, and he was on an offense that was absolutely loaded. But in terms of a tight end that the defense has to keep an eye on their hat the entire possession, that's what Tyler Warren is. And it felt to me like this is a guy that actually is going to be the offensive centerpiece. And by that I mean everything is going to be catered around what he opens up because defenses have to pay attention to him. You establish him early, you draw the defense into that, and then you pick apart where people are then too thin because they are honing in on Warren. Is this overreaction from one game?
No. I mean, to say he's going to have this every game, I think he's going to have better games than this. But what he does, it opens things up. Jack Doyle is the last tight end that actually was a threat in the middle of the field, and you felt good in throwing to him. Tyler Warren can do more, and we just saw. Remember that he had the one run on short yardage. So I've always thought that the fact they've gone with Daniel Jones, it opens up the playbook more for Tyler Warren to do things that maybe Anthony Richardson would have done if he was on the field. So yeah, I guess you don't want to overreact, but can you imagine if it was 38-8, 33-8 Miami? People would be overreacting.
Yeah. Miami looked like they were in complete disarray. I mean,
right.
But again, Chap, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the show, and that is Miami might be the worst team in the league. I have no idea. I don't think that's the case. They may be. But when you are playing the worst team in the league, your job is to, once you get the lead, just stay at it and just keep going. And that's exactly what they did. They did not relinquish yesterday, and I thought it was a wire-to-wire solid effort all the way around.
Agreed. I wish I'd got the shutout, but you can't have everything.
You can't have everything. Where would you put it, according to Stephen Wright? All right, Chap, I'll tell you what. We'll let you get a nap, as is always the case. And by the way, it was nice of your Hornets of Beech Grove, knowing that you were under the weather, to get a nice win for you on Friday night. I saw that you sent that out.
They dropped 60. They dropped 60.
I know. I'm surprised you didn't do the little raccoon gif for Beach Grove, right?
Well, it took me a little by surprise. I've got to get back in the swing of things, and I might have been getting the onslaught of COVID. So forgive me for being a little bit under the weather.
Well, Chap, as you know, and I'll say it on the airways, but I'll text you this independently. Anything you need me to drop by, you let me know, and certainly get some rest, and we will catch up with you when you're feeling a little bit better in a couple of days, all right?
Sounds good, guys. Stay in touch.
I appreciate it. Mike Chappell joining us from CBS 4 and Fox 59. Yesterday after the game, I had asked the question, and I'll do this each and every week. I did it a year ago as well, and that is, now I always get a kick out of this, Eddie, when I ask the question of, tell me in 3 words your impression of the Colts through one game of the 2025 season, okay?
Yeah.
478 replies.
Pretty impressive. Is that a new track record?
That's a good question, actually. But then sometimes in those 478, the very best since a Peyton Manning-led team, the management and preparation was on a different level. And then that leads to people like, he said 3 words, dude. Here are some of the better ones, though, okay? The most obvious were things like, you know, I'm cautiously optimistic. Or like the defense. That's a good one. I enjoyed it. I like this one. Don't be fooled. See? People are there to Colts have life. That from my buddy Andrew. Danny Dimes, baby. I'll be damned. Dark horse rhythm. This was a very common one. Wait and see, right? That was a very common one. It's one game. That was a very common one. Super Bowl bound. That was a very common answer. Obviously a facetious one, but nonetheless out there a lot. John had this. Feed Tyler Warren. I think that's right. I mean, I really do think that that's where their season, he is going to be so important. Zion said this, it's a good win. I won't allow myself to get too excited until we get 3 games in. We could be extremely good or the Dolphins extremely bad. But I do really hope we are extremely good. To which everybody's like, 3 words, dude. But that's a good, I think one of the things that you learn in that question and the answers is exactly that of people. You get 3 kinds of answer. You get the kind of people that have become Colts realists over the last decade that basically are like, hey, slow your roll. You get the answers of people that are like, you know what? So far, so good. They did what I asked. You know what I mean? They did what we wanted them to do. And then you get the group that's, you know, that gets facetious and overreacts, right?
Did you almost say a bad word there?
Bound. What's that?
Did you almost say a bad word there?
No. You know, they overreact and then they become, I couldn't get out facetious. That's all I was trying to say, but sarcastic with it. Of just becoming, you know, hyperbole. I think wait and see was a big one. Jacques says, we got a team. Several people said, I am surprised. Chris says, on to Denver. That's a good one.
Fool me once.
How about this from Kyle? Plan the parade. See? Again. Steve has a good one. All-pro tight end. But I think that's the overwhelming sentiment is the fact of, yes, it beats the alternative, but they did what they need to do. Now.
Ooh, here's one. Rather see AR.
Interesting. Which does you more good for your long-term health? Getting Anthony Richardson out there and taking the lumps for another year and letting him – I'm not saying that it's guaranteed he would take lumps, but, I mean, letting him learn on the job, or riding this out with Daniel Jones and seeing the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, you have to – I think it comes down to this. I truly believe this. Shane Steichen is an NFL head coach. Shane Steichen is an NFL head coach because he's been around football, he understands offenses, and he jump-started the career of Jalen Hurts. And that's why he was hired in Indianapolis to lead the Colts. And Shane Steichen goes to work every day at 56th, West 56th to the Colts complex. He doesn't go to a realty company. He doesn't go to an insurance company. He doesn't go to a marketing firm. He goes to an NFL football facility because he works in the National Football League as a head coach, meaning he is entrusted to know things about football that the rest of us don't know. It doesn't mean that he doesn't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that he is the best coach in the league. It doesn't mean that he is going to hold that position forever. I don't know the answer to those things. But what I do know is that he seemingly would have more inside knowledge, more understanding of what the Colts need than somebody on the outside. And when Shane Steichen when it was trusted to him to make the decision as to who the quarterback should be, when he went with Daniel Jones, there was a lot of question about it. There also was a lot of drawing of conclusion that it meant that Anthony Richardson, as I had said, if Daniel Jones wins this job, it's going to be because Anthony Richardson did not. Because I think that they wanted to give Richardson every opportunity to continue to grow and put him in position. They have more invested in Richardson. But when Shane Steichen talked about things like it goes above and beyond just the throwing of the ball. It's the way you conduct meetings. It's the way that you are in the room. It's the way you are in the huddle. It's the overall operation. He kept using the term overall operation. And Shane Steichen is in that position because it is trusted for him to make the right decision based on having all of the information and information we don't have. And I think Shane Steichen, in that capacity, very early on, from the time that he was drafted and then what he saw in OTAs, Shane Steichen realized that maybe not game to game, but the foundation and the starting point of their offense is going to be around Tyler Warren. I don't mean throwing him the ball 12 times a game. I mean establishing Tyler Warren early, forcing defenses to know what a weapon this guy is.
He's an old school throwback freaking baller is what he is.
Right there. And I said earlier he was talking about Jones. He was talking about Tyler Warren there. Knowing that, play that one more time, that he knows this about Tyler Warren.
He's an old school throwback freaking baller is what he is.
Okay. He knows based on that you have to put Tyler Warren in the position. If you want to get Michael Pittman Jr. open over the middle, if you want to get A.D. Mitchell open on, whether it be a bubble screen or just in the intermediary, if you want to unload a deep out to Alec Pierce, if you want to get Jonathan Taylor opened up in between the tackles, then the way you do that is you soften the defense by making them aware of a guy that has operating areas in all areas.
Jake, I don't know if you watched closely on that Pittman touchdown, but Warren was going over the middle on a deep post, and the safety read Pittman late.
Correct.
Because he was
Bingo.
focusing on Tyler
Bingo.
Warren, and it allowed the window for Daniel Jones to hit Pittman down the sideline for that touchdown.
Of the Colts' offensive weapons, Tyler Warren is the one that you have to pay attention to on the highest number of areas of the field. And so, therefore, when you establish him early, it opens up everything, like you just mentioned, Eddie, offensively for the rest of their players. And Shane Steichen is the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts and is an NFL head coach because he was able to see that in order to do that and get Warren established early, you have to have a quarterback that hits the layups, to use the Chris Ballard term. And while Anthony Richardson has bigger big play capability, and while Anthony Richardson has the higher ceiling payoff of getting fans up out of their seat with excitement over the course of a game, he has those things. But when you watch Anthony Richardson, for the most part, and yes, he was very good last year against the Jets, and he had drives that were very encouraging. But for the most part, Richardson was struggling to get himself in rhythm and then would occasionally go against the norm with an outstanding play. But in life, there are rules and there are exceptions to the rules. And the people that are most often successful in life live by the rule and not the exception. And when you were waiting for Anthony Richardson to have a big play, you were waiting for the exception of what was the rule for the most part of the way he was playing. Daniel Jones, Shane Steichen saw and recognized, was the guy that better in the short passing game can get Tyler Warren involved, which then opens up everybody else. And that's why Steichen's in that position. That's why Steichen is the one that was trusted to make that decision. Not somebody on Instagram, not somebody on TikTok, not somebody on the radio, Shane Steichen. And he saw those things. Now, does that mean that this is going to be the case for 17 weeks? Maybe not. We may go back in October. On Halloween, we might be doing a show getting ready for the debut of Anthony Richardson because Daniel Jones yesterday was his ceiling. That's entirely possible. Only time will tell. But yesterday, what you saw was an offense that utilized its best talent and its most versatile talent in Tyler Warren. And that's crazy to say about a tight end that's played a NFL game, right? But coming out of college at a big-time program, he was put on the map because he played anywhere that the Nittany Lions needed him to play. And so if you are a defense and you are looking at the Colts and you're scouting it and you're looking at the blueprint, you know, it's like if you read a college basketball scouting report on a team, and there's that one player that they always say, like, be aware of where he is at all times, can score from anywhere. That Tyler Warren, and I'm not trying to be hyperbole here, but he is the one player. With Michael Pittman Jr., it's like, okay, don't let him get open across the middle. With Alec Pierce, don't let him get it behind the defense. With Jonathan Taylor, don't let him spring open in space. With Tyler Warren, don't let him do any of those things. And so that creates the guy, that is the guy that expands and opens up the defense the most. And so they found the quarterback that more likely gets him the ball in those areas without having to live with the exception. I did make an observation, by the way, earlier about one of sports' most famous venues, which we will get to on the other side, and Eddie will answer the question as to whether or not my adventure on Saturday was weird or interesting. We'll do that when we come back. It's Query and Company here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. my question that Eddie's going to answer, whether it's interesting or weird. I noticed two things last night in the debut for the season of Sunday Night Football. First, I found it interesting that, and this is going to come off like I'm being critical of it. I'm not at all. I strictly was surprised by it. The privacy, understandably so, that at least by all account from my understanding, that the Mannings have had regarding, I shouldn't say that. I mean, Peyton Manning's son has been to like Nuggets games with him and things like that.
Marshall
Manning. But to have Marshall Manning in the Sunday Night Open with Peyton Manning surprised me. It was cool, and he looks much older than an 8th grader. And it was fun. It was a good bit that they did, but it surprised me a little bit.
Could you tell he was his son? Had that nose.
Yeah, he totally looks like him, doesn't he? Here's the other thing. Good bit that they did, but it surprised me a little bit.
Could you tell he was his son? Had that nose.
Yeah, he totally looks like him, doesn't he? Here's the other thing, though. Hoodie surprised me. Not hoodie, but a Colts sweatshirt. Surprised me a little bit. Not in a bad way.
He also came back yesterday and delivered a speech at halftime when they inducted.
No, I mean, I understand that.
The Ring of Honor.
I understand
I was
that.
just telling you as well, he did come back.
But Manning has always, since the time that he left Indianapolis, he has always done things for the franchise when it was needed or requested on a dignitary level.
Like yesterday?
Well, he came back for his statue unveiling. He came back for the Ring of Honor. He has come back for his teammates' Ring of Honor inductions. I mean, he has come back for all of those things, and then yesterday for Jim Irsay as well. But for the most part, when he, in his post-playing career, when Manning has been in the public light, he has done so more so as a Denver representative. He usually is in some way wearing, like, I don't know, like, you know, he still lives in Denver and he does the podcast or the Manning cast from Denver and etc. I mean, he that was the first time that I have seen him in a public national standpoint doing it as an ambassador or representative of the Colts as opposed to either neutral or the Broncos.
And the Manning cast once again not doing the Colts Monday night game when they have that game against San Francisco later this year, I want to say.
That's their one. Yeah, that is December 22nd, by the way. Now, what was the other thing I was going to point out? Oh, then the game started between the Ravens and the Bills. And when you watched that, and I thought Daniel Jones yesterday was outstanding. And I thought the Colts offense, you know, obviously it goes without saying, they were very, very efficient. But when you see those two teams last night, Eddie, am I correct? Or do you think I'm overstating it when you see that and you go, whoa, that looks like a whole different level from what I've watched, not just in Indianapolis, but the rest of the league? It's
like in baseball going from AAA to the major leagues, or like in high school going from the junior varsity team to the varsity team.
I thought about this. I immediately was taken back to this situation. When the Colts had their Monday Night Miracle in Tampa, and I've told this many times before, but I was working at Channel 6 at the time, and that game was a Monday Night Football game that was obviously on ABC on Channel 6.
Yeah.
The next day, and it was a different era then. You didn't have DVR. You did, but you had TiVo. But like, you didn't have the mass multimedia consumption and re-air capability like you have today. But the next day at WRTV, and anybody that worked there then will back me up on this, the number of emails and phone calls that were placed to Channel 6 on that Monday morning or Tuesday morning from people that went to bed when the Colts were down 21 with 4 minutes left and called and were like, oh my gosh, can you guys tonight replay the fourth quarter? There were thousands of requests about that. And I wonder, the answer to this is no, because now everybody can just go back and find it on their own. But if it was the same era, in terms of ingestion, would those phone calls be taking place right now to the Buffalo NBC affiliate from people in Buffalo like, holy cow, you know what I mean?
Most definitely. I mean, you had fans leaving the game last night. Even Josh Allen was like, yeah, we saw fans leaving, down 15 with
Don't
5-6
give up
minutes
on us,
left.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Saturday I left here Friday after the show.
What show?
This show.
This show?
Yes.
What show is this?
That'd be Aquarium Company.
Okay.
I left Friday after the show and about 5:30 and flew to Los Angeles.
Just wanted to make sure you were not under the influence.
And so I got to L.A. It is weird because you leave here at like 5:30 and you land and it's like 6 o'clock.
5:30.
Yeah. So I went to dinner, whatever. I was by myself. I went by myself to Los Angeles. And I went to go see Oasis at the Rose Bowl on Saturday night, which was a fabulous show. I'm not going to bore everybody with the details of the concert, but it was, and I talked earlier about the Rose Bowl, and I was surprised by the Rose Bowl. Iconic venue, tons of fun, but man, that stadium is a tough, like Soldier Field, it was built in a different era, and it's not the most comfortable of places, but obviously you're standing once the concert gets underway. But the funny thing about flying out to L.A. is, of course, on Saturday, I woke up at like 6:30 in the morning because my body's on Eastern time. So I wake up and it's sunny out, and I'm like, well, it's like not even 7 o'clock yet. And I have always been somebody that when I read about something or see a lot about something, I then, I become fascinated by it and I want to see it for myself. For example, when I was a kid, one of the first books that I read as a kid that I really enjoyed was Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. And in that book, Peter lives in New York City, and he and his buddy Jimmy Fargo played on his favorite rock in Central Park. And I had this, as I'm reading the book, I had this picture in my mind of the rock in Central Park. And I became fascinated with New York City, almost obsessed with the thought of living in someday or being in New York City, which is why when I was in college, I took a spring break when everybody else was going to Cabo or whatever, and I took a stack of resumes, older era, and went out to New York and went to every television and radio station in the New York City area with my resume, trying to get an internship so that I could spend a semester and live in New York, because I wanted to see it and experience it because that had been planted in my head. And there are so many things that when I read about it or study it, I then want to see up close and personal versus like the image that I had in my head. And I don't know why it is. I know that it's weird in this area, but one of the things that has always fascinated me is the counterculture movement of the late 60s and the Manson murders. And I know that that's macabre. It's not the murders that fascinate me. It's the fact of this wind of social change of kids that grew up in the like Yes Miss Landers, Leave It to Beaver era, and then when they're 19 or 20, they fall into that, just the counterculture of the late 60s. So when I woke up on Saturday morning, I have always heard about Spahn Ranch, which if you've seen the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it is portrayed. Spahn Ranch is the old Western ranch that the Manson family and all of Manson's followers lived in the late 60s during the time that all of that took place, before they retreated out into the desert and lived in Barker Ranch, which is a different place. But Spahn Ranch is where they lived when they first were getting together and, becoming the quote-unquote family. And adjacent to Spahn Ranch, there is an area that has a cave that the Manson family took a famous photo for Life magazine when this just study was being done of like, who are all of these private school kids that have dropped out of high school or college and moved out to California to basically do drugs and listen to music and follow the advice of this guy that once lived in Indianapolis named Charles Manson. And so in reading about and just going over articles and whatever else about Spahn Ranch and all of that, I always became fascinated. Now, Spahn Ranch is no longer there. It was destroyed in a fire in 1970, and it was in an area that is now a state park. So think of like Brown County State Park, that kind of thing. But the location of where it was is obviously still there. and then the cave itself in the area where the cleared out area where Manson led his musical revivals is all still there in a remote area of the woods that you have to hike to find. So Saturday when I got up, that's what I did. I had time. I hate to say time to kill. That comes off the wrong way, but I had time, and so I went and I found the cave, the area, all of it. And it's not far off of the main street and the main road of what was then Spawn Ranch, but it's in a desolate area. There's the rustling of wildlife and birds and whatever else around, but I mean, I was the only person. It's not very far off the road, but you got to do some searching and some hiking to get to it. And then I found it and was like, okay, here is everything that I had read about as a kid growing up, and the news articles and the photos and everything else, and the portrayal in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So, Eddie, having said all of that, you then get to determine, or people can send me a text and tell me what they think. Is that interesting or is that weird? Your thoughts?
I think it's you. I don't think it's weird. I don't think it's interesting. I think it's you.
So am I interesting or am I weird?
You're you, Jake.
That is the biggest cop-out answer of all time, right? That's a cop-out answer. I want to know, is it interesting or is it weird? I'm totally okay with people saying that it's weird. I get it. But it is fascinating to me the number of people, when I tell them something like that go, dude, that is so weird, and then instantly ask me like 15 questions in a row about it. The Rose Bowl, by the way, very, very, very cool venue. Awesome to be able to say that I was there. Paul McCartney was there. Vince Vaughn was there at the show. DiCaprio was there at the show. I didn't see those guys. But it was very cool to be at that venue on a beautiful night in Pasadena, California, and the stadium itself is a dump. Tyler Warren was huge yesterday for the Colts, and there are a lot of takeaways that we can take from week 1 of the NFL. We'll get into that next. Now, see, this crosses it into weird now. We've gone from interesting to now weird by spinning up this hit. And when I say hit, that also is probably a double entendre. Colts yesterday, impressive win over the Miami Dolphins, and it is interesting, you know, which is a more factual statement? The Colts played as well as they could play, or Miami looked completely lost and like they might be one of the worst teams in the league?
Can both be true?
Yeah, and I think both may be true. You know the videos that you see of Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Dolphins, when he does interviews at the end of the half and then he sprints off the field?
Yep.
He pulls up his sweatpants like in hipster mode and then sprints off the field. There are certain things that you put yourself in a unique situation or position because if it's working, then, you know, there's what do they say? There's a thin line between genius and madness. There's also a thin line between eccentric and like uniquely, I guess, eccentric, and then also just it doesn't work. And in Mike McDaniel's case, the wearing the sweatpants and pulling them up and then just kind of the overall weird nature of the sprint off the field and those sorts of things. If you're winning, that works and it's cool and it's eccentric. And if you're not winning, then it's like side distraction reason why you suck. And it felt like yesterday he needed to do that sprint straight to the South Florida version of Biff Ward and be like, go ahead and put the house up for sale. I think this is over with, because it felt like yesterday, and it's 1 week. It's 1 week. And we have seen plenty of years where in week one, we overreact to something and we're like month one of the NFL season.
Remember when Jacksonville beat the Colts week 1 and then never won a game again?
Yeah, bingo, right? Or the year that I mentioned earlier, the Monday Night Miracle that the Colts had in Tampa. You know, the Bucs that year got out to like a 4-0 start and literally was like, this team is never again losing a game. You always have it. But it does feel like just because you already were starting to see things get slippery for Miami, that you wondered going into the year whether or not which way it was going to go. Because this is a team that literally 24 months ago, they were the trendsetter of open space playmakers, athletes everywhere on the field, unstoppable, juggernaut offense.
Mm-hmm.
And then once things just became less consistent for them, then it became, oh, wait a minute, actually, this team may just be terrible. And this coach may just be like a weird dude. And I don't know Mike McDaniel. He may be the nicest guy. I have no idea. But it just seems now like there's a disconnect. And yesterday, you do wonder, and again, it's 1 week, but there is a level of curiosity of you wonder whether or not that, if the Colts broke it. I mean, I know it's 1 week, but they looked so checked out that there is the curiosity of, are we going to look back months from now and say that was the beginning of the end for everything in terms of this era of Miami Dolphins? But we are in Indianapolis. Our focus is the Colts. We're going to break down what took place yesterday, the good and not much bad, but is there anything that we should be cautiously optimistic about? We'll get into all of it next.
Query and Company.
I'm going to be keeping you company for the next few hours.
You are not going to believe the company.
This company.
You're going to bankrupt your mama's company.
At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
Daniel Jones looks left, great protection, fires downfield. Again, it's Warren with the grab. Went up high to bring it in, and he's down to the 11-yard line.
It's impressive. He's an old school throwback, freaking baller is what he is.
First play of the second quarter. Daniel Jones flies it right side. It's caught at the goal line. Touchdown for the Colts, and it's Michael Pittman Jr. A 27-yard, beautifully placed pass by Daniel Jones. Two backs in the backfield with Tua Tagovailoa. Play action, drops the throw. Here comes the rush by the Colts. The ball is out, and it squirts right to a blue shirt, and the Colts have another takeaway into plus territory. Kenny Moore, the second, gets the sack. Jones under center, ball on the right hash this time. Two receivers go left, including Drew Ogletree. Taylor in the backfield. And here's a quarterback sneak by Daniel Jones. He's in! Yes, sir! The quarterback finishes the deal. Another touchdown for the Colts. Tua backs the pass. Rolling to his right. Sets up. Delivers over the middle. Picked off. Latu with the interception. Gets up off the mat. He's running upfield across the 40-yard line, and he's pushed out of bounds in front of the Colts sideline, and his teammates are mobbing him. Jones, quarterback keeper again. This time he slides in. Touchdown on a quarterback keeper by Daniel Jones.
Great team win. Everybody in that locker room, every coach, every player, the preparation that goes into it to play the way we did, complimentary football on both sides of it. I'm excited for the city, this organization, to get this first win at home. With Mr. Irsay going to the Ring of Honor, it was only fitting to get that done today.
Jim Irsay from, of course, after I believe the New England game a couple of years ago with the Colts, and he was the epicenter of emotion yesterday as the Colts get a Week 1 win over the Miami Dolphins, 33-8. Matt Taylor, you heard on the call there, and Shane Steichen talking about a number of players, including Tyler Warren on a Colts victory Monday. Good afternoon to you, Jake Query, along with Eddie Garrison.
How do you do?
This from Scott. Jake, not interesting at all. Took too long to tell your story. Colts Monday fever in the playoffs in college football. Anything but stories about you would be great. I did hear Don Fischer, Scott said. Well, that's cool. That means that he was listening for over an hour, so we appreciate that. But that's a fair point. Huh?
Don Fischer.
That's right. Fair point. Indiana with a big win over Kennesaw State. I thought an interesting point was made on the text line in talking about Daniel Jones, and I'd have to go back to look to see who sent it, but it was a very good point, and that is that right here, Eric and Avon. Jake, I think the 4th and 1 to Josh Downs where Jones changed the play and the blocking assignments is why he is the quarterback and not Anthony Richardson. No way does Anthony Richardson do that. I think that is one thing about – and look, it's not my intention of turning a victory from the Colts into some sort of continued Richardson-Jones debate. But I think what we saw yesterday – was the reason on full display why Shane Steichen is the coach and Daniel Jones was his selection. And it goes back to selection in general. Chris Ballard made the selection of Tyler Warren. Now, everybody and their brother knew that the Colts needed a tight end. And Tyler Warren, had Brock Bowers level intrigue about him. And the tight end has become, it's a copycat league. If you look at what, say, the Chiefs did with Travis Kelce, that began in the copycat league, teams looking for tight ends that are big offensive weapons for you as opposed to strictly being the guy that blocks for you and then gets you a quick, like a Dwayne Allen, 4th and 3 level reception. Tight ends as receivers, I mean, it's kind of always been that way if you have one like that, but clearly that now is such an important piece of the NFL offense in 2025. And Shane Steichen is the head coach of the Colts, partially because of the fact that he was seen as a quarterback whisperer that got Jalen Hurts going in Philly, for example. And Steichen's ability to recognize things about a quarterback are why he's in that position. I'm not saying that means that this is going to be a season-long proof in the pudding for him. But when the Colts knew that they were going to have to groom a franchise quarterback, they got a coach that they felt was a quarterback coach. And yes, there's an irony in the fact that Anthony Richardson was the guy that they drafted to pair with him. And he was in there in that room during that draft. But once they, and it is my belief this has already happened. I know that they will tell you differently, and they would know better than I, as I'm about to illuminate. But when it comes to Anthony Richardson, it's my belief, not a report, just simply my belief, that deep down internally, the Colts have believed that that ship has sailed. But when Shane Steichen was then given the responsibility of, you are the head coach of this team, and I am Chris Ballard, the general manager, and I have built a roster, but it is up to you as the head coach. You have been entrusted to make the decisions on what you feel is going to best help you win games. And whether or not he had total autonomy in the selection of Daniel Jones, I don't know. But Shane Steichen opted for Daniel Jones. What we saw yesterday were two selections marrying one another. The selection of Tyler Warren as the tight end by Chris Ballard, and the selection by Shane Steichen of Daniel Jones as his quarterback. Because Tyler Warren is the most important player in the Colts offense. Jonathan Taylor might be their most dynamic in-space player. Michael Pittman Jr. might be their most reliable, tough catch over the middle receiver. Alec Pierce might be their best long ball, big gain, home run, 55-yard pass in the breadbasket receiver. And Josh Downs might be their best little wild card that's out there that you sprinkle it to when the play's breaking down and you need somebody to just all of a sudden sliver open and bail you out receiver. But the guy that is the best, and it's one game, but we anticipate that the guy that's the best hybrid of everything I just mentioned is Tyler Warren. He can be the 3-yard turnaround, quick, dump it off to him to get you out of a bad play guy. He can be the flash across the middle, tough catch guy. He can be the in-space yard after catch guy. He can even be the out of the backfield guy. But Shane Steichen, I think, once the selection was made of Tyler Warren, knew that he had to then select the quarterback that was going to best utilize that weapon. And Chris Ballard had said with Anthony Richardson that what he needed from Anthony Richardson to make Richardson a better player was for Richardson to simply make the layups. But Richardson became obsessed with the and one tape. He became, obsessed is probably the wrong word, but his calling card, we as fans, as media, became enthralled by Richardson's big play capability of the pull-up, breathtaking from the logo 3. But that's not how you win in the NFL. You win in the NFL with everyday rhythm play and ball control. And when I say ball control, I mean clock control. And long drives. And Richardson's been able to do that. He did it a year ago in New York and did it very well. But those things became the exception. And the norm became oversailing it, 3 and out, bad decision, not recognizing a blitz. That became the norm with Richardson's offenses. And so Steichen went with the guy in Daniel Jones that hits the layups. And those layups are going to be establishing Tyler Warren early in games, which then creates defenses to have to constantly worry about where number 84 is, and that frees everybody else up. And that's what happened yesterday. Overall, he was 7 of 75, Tyler Warren, in terms of his production. But early on, they established him right away early. And then what happened after that? Then Jones was able to diversify the offense and move the ball and spread it around to a ton of different areas. And we haven't even talked, Eddie, about Lou Anarumo's defense, which I thought was yesterday, again, the selection of Lou Anarumo as your defensive coordinator and what he can do in terms of not being passive and being aggressive, but at the same time giving different looks and keeping an offense at bay. And that's what they did yesterday to Miami's offense. And that's an offense that has playmakers. Waddle and Hill and Tua can be a playmaker, but, man, he looked terrible yesterday. I mean,
they made him second guess. Joel tweeted this out, Joel Erickson, who's a recipient of the Beer Fairy from time and time again.
That's right.
Made this point out on Twitter that in the last 2 seasons, Tua has led the league in terms of from the time he gets the ball in his hands from snap to releasing it. He's been the fastest in the NFL. Yesterday, he was holding the ball a lot longer. In comparison to those numbers, I think it was like 2.4 in terms of the time that he normally gets it out. Yesterday, it was like 2.7. So that half a second was making the Colt, was because of the Colts secondary making him second guess everything. And Cam Bynum said post game that the interception that Tua threw to start off the game to him was because of uncertainty. It was a throw that Tua wasn't confident in. He could tell from the time he left his fingers because there was a defensive back that was playing underneath that ends up cutting across in front of Tyreek Hill as he's letting that ball go. So it sails because he's trying to get it over that defender, and it just goes right into the lap of Cam Bynum.
You know, if you watch the game, and this is always the critique of Lucas Oil Stadium, I totally get it. I totally get it. I mean, I'm not going to get into my entire rant. I'm going to spare everybody that about tax dollars and retractable roof and et cetera. Okay, I totally get it.
It was working yesterday.
But that's right. But there is no doubt about this. When they have the roof open, it's a tough watch on television. It is. The sun and it's weird in that building, it's almost like the power of suggestion of the shadows, like over lights, and I know it's the way the camera has to do it, but the field looks so washed out in its resolution that you can't see what's taking place in the sun areas of the field when you're watching on television. And yesterday, it was as if the Colts, after one game, the vision and the projection and the trajectory of the Colts seemingly after yesterday was in the shadow part of the field. You could clearly see it. It was easy to see what was developing. When you look at the Colts yesterday, you could tell what they wanted to do. They were able to do it. You can look at their season now and say, here's who they are. This is how they're going to try to win. This is what they are. The Dolphins, on the other hand, their entire season seemed like the plays that were taking place in the sun areas of the field. You couldn't tell who was what. You couldn't tell where they were going. You couldn't tell what the direction was. And you couldn't tell what the long-term play is going to be. Two different teams, two different franchises, two different visions on that field. But for the Colts, what they did yesterday is all that you can ask a team to do. You know, Purdue got a big win on Saturday. Indiana got a big win on Saturday. They played two teams that are lower-tier Division I teams that you're supposed to beat. But all you can do is go out and do what is asked of you. Yeah, Purdue's got USC upcoming, and that's a big one. And yeah, Indiana, after Indiana State goes into the Big Ten, and they start with Illinois, and then they got Oregon. Those are big ones. But with the games that you have against Kennesaw State or Southern Illinois or Ball State or the games that are Old Dominion, all you can do is what is in front of you in that particular game, and that is come out, establish yourself as the better team, and then continue to make the plays necessary to never put the game in doubt. And it has been a long time since we have seen a Colts team go out in a game like in the NFL, get out to an early lead, and it was never in question. That game was over when it was 17-0. It was over because not only did they establish themselves as the better team, they never decelerated from it at all. And it was over. And so I thought in all areas yesterday, the Colts hit on every cylinder that you want them to hit on. Now, I'm curious to know whether or not we find out, and we may not for a week. But we've had this happen before. I'm a big believer in precedent. And there's precedent when it comes to the Colts at times of, do they? Sometimes a guy will get dinged up. You don't hear about it. And then all of a sudden, a week later, they're on the injury report. And it's like, well, yeah, that was something that happened actually in the such and such game. And they didn't need him late in the game, and that was the luxury of getting out to that kind of a lead and having that kind of control of the game. But Jonathan Taylor, I don't know whether it was a stinger. You know, he was out of the game, and then and at one point I think grabbed his helmet, looked like he was going to come back in, but they finished it off with Giddens and Eddie. You knew who got a carry.
Yes, I do, Jake.
Ulysses Bentley, yes. I don't know if you noticed, but somebody wake up, please. You be the third, because his son, Ulysses Bentley the fourth, is getting in the game for the Colts.
I liked your tweet, though, yesterday. It was pretty good.
You did like my tweet.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Would you like to share with everybody my tweet? This goes back to the Eric Dickerson days, admittedly, but go ahead.
I don't remember the exact phrase.
This was when Jonathan Taylor was taken out of the game due to precautionary injury reasons, and my tweet was, Eddie?
If the Rolls Royce needs to go into the garage, just roll out the Bentley.
That's right.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. I believe I got several eye roll emojis off of that. Not as many as I did for telling my Manson family cave story earlier, but, nonetheless, I digress. But it was a good performance, and big players of the game. I mean, Cam Bynum, there is going to be a lot made, understandably and rightly so, about Jim Irsay in that game yesterday. And it was special to have Peyton Manning speaking about Jim Irsay at halftime, no question. And that actually is symbolic in more ways than people realize. I don't want to make too much of it. I don't want to overstate it or overread it. But the reality is that Peyton Manning being released by the Colts, and I still maintain that was, in the moment, the right decision. I know that's not a popular opinion, but in the moment, that was the right decision. We could retroactively go back and say, well, they could have had both. They could have handled it. I get it, but in the moment, that was the right decision. But nonetheless, it was a decision that hurt Peyton Manning. And while I know that he has a great deal of respect for Jim Irsay, it was a moment that, in some ways, iced the relationship. Cooled is a better word. Cooled the relationship between Jim Irsay and Peyton Manning. Not from Jim Irsay's standpoint, but from Peyton Manning's standpoint. And kind of like how I talked about when Reggie Miller and the Pacers went to the finals this year, one of the great things about it was seeing Reggie Miller at every game with his son, sitting on the floor, wearing Mark Jackson and Jalen Rose jerseys and blue jeans, and just being a fan. And as I mentioned it at the time, putting away the Superman outfit and just coming out as Clark Kent and just being like, I'm just a dude here to root for my team. And it's uncomfortable to talk, it's a weird thing. But privately, I think there were a lot of people in this town that were like, we still love Reggie Miller, but he's like Mr. TNT now, and he comes back and he has the headsets on and he waves at the game, and then he goes back to doing his thing, and he doesn't come around a lot. Not that he dislikes the Pacers, but, like, do we love Reggie now more than Reggie loves us? And I think if there was question about that, that was the beauty of that finals run, is seeing him on the floor. It was like Sally Field winning her Oscar and saying, you do love me. You do. You like me. And, yes, Reggie Miller, like, coming back, it was like he's one of us. And it was awesome.
One of us. One of us.
Yes, right? And Peyton Manning, upon his departure from the Colts, moved out to Denver and played for the Broncos, and now lives in Denver and goes to Broncos games and sits courtside for Nuggets games and wears like an orange tie a lot. And I'm part of that's Tennessee, I realize, don't get me wrong. But, you know, I think there was a part deep down of people that are like, we still love Peyton. And he comes back, yes, he comes back for the Ring of Honor ceremonies. And when there are official capacity functions, he is always there for his teammates at the time and etc. But for him to come back and be the one to give a speech about Jim Irsay, and then on Sunday Night Football to be wearing a Colts pullover for the intro to Sunday Night Football, I think went a long way of like, you know what? Then that is the ultimate tribute to Jim Irsay.
Jake, you know what just hit me while you were talking about this earlier and talking about it again? What's the family lineage thing that you have of the Colts quarterbacks in the history of the franchise?
Oh, I mean, yeah, my
because we have another branch to it now.
My 5 degrees of separation.
Yeah, does it now become 6 degrees?
The 6th one being?
Well, Daniel Jones replaced Eli Manning in New York.
Boy.
The brother of Peyton Manning.
Boy. Eddie. So do I have to redo this all over again real quick in 45 seconds?
I think so.
Okay. So once upon a time, there was an NFL franchise called the Baltimore Colts that really mired in mediocrity, and they did not have a great run throughout the late 70s and into the early 80s. But hope came in the fact that they had the number 1 draft pick, and they selected a guy named John Elway, who was a quarterback at Stanford, whose father, Jack, had been a quarterback's coach and also had coached in college football. But John Elway didn't want to play for the Colts, so he opted instead to demand a trade, so they traded him to Denver to play for the Broncos. And the Colts eventually moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis, and they themselves continued to struggle. But eventually they found a little bit of hope in the fact that they signed a free agent by the name of Jim Harbaugh, who had played at Stanford, same place that John Elway had played, and Jim Harbaugh's father, who also was a coach, and I believe is also named Jack, and had coached in college football. But I digress. So Jim Harbaugh had a little bit of success, and then eventually he decided to move on. And when he left the Colts, he went to go play in Baltimore for a new team they had called the Ravens. But nonetheless, back to the Colts. Eventually the Colts opted for a quarterback in 1998 that brought them promise by the name of Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning, who, by the way, his father, Archie Manning, had played in the NFL, and Archie Manning, when he played in the NFL, had an understudy by the name of Oliver Luck, who was his backup, and Oliver Luck's son, Andrew, would eventually play at Stanford, but more on that in a minute. So Peyton Manning played for the Colts, had great success, and then he got hurt, and they didn't know whether or not Peyton Manning would actually be able to continue as the quarterback of the Colts, so they opted to go back into the draft once again, and in doing so, they drafted Andrew Luck, who had played at Stanford, and when he played at Stanford, by the way, I should mention the fact that his coach at Stanford was Jim Harbaugh, who at one time had been with the Colts, and he broke a lot of records that were set by John Elway, who'd been drafted by the Colts but opted not to go there. So because they drafted Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning then was released by the Colts, needed a place to go, and so he went to Denver to play for the Broncos, whose president, by the way, was John Elway. And in doing so, he then finished his career in Denver. His brother Eli was playing for the New York Giants at the time. Eli eventually got hurt in New York, lost his starting job, was replaced by Daniel Jones, who eventually would come back and become the starter for the Indianapolis Colts.
Nice job.
Excellent call, Eddie.
Thank you.
Excellent call on that, by the way.
Are you proud of me? I'm thinking more like you.
That's
I don't
impressive.
know if that's
Is that good or bad?
I know I was about to ask you, is that a good or bad thing?
You tell me. But that is a fascinating layer to the cake, new icing on the cake. And thank you for allowing me to bring that back up.
The only complaint that I have, Jake, is that was way longer than 45 seconds.
Well, it's hard to do because you had that new layer.
Yeah, that's also true.
But yes, all of it. Yesterday, I thought it was a great game for the Colts, and I thought it was a great win. And I do think that symbolically there was a lot of catharticism that took place for fans being able to embrace and celebrate Jim Irsay and what he's meant to this franchise, what he's obviously because he's the owner of it, but what he's meant to the city of Indianapolis. And for Peyton Manning, for example, to come back and then for them to go out and snap that streak, the first time in 12 years that they win a season opener. They are now 1-0, and I thought the daughters handled it perfectly in terms of the post game in the locker room, and Shane Steichen giving the game ball, and Kaylin Jackson addressing the team and showing her gratitude. It was overall a great day for the Colts. It was. And now you have to put it together, and the Denver Broncos, who I mentioned, now for week number 2, you've got to put it together and go from one win to the next. But Daniel Jones was selected at quarterback because of the tight end that they had selected and the fact that those two guys now ran that team, Daniel Jones did, in select fashion. And I thought it was, and then the defense, it goes without saying. Chris Ballard gets a lot of credit because many people, myself included, were critical of Chris Ballard and the way the team was constructed. And the areas yesterday where they were their best were areas that he had been critiqued for. The quarterback, obviously, and now, one game does not a season make, but putting Daniel Jones in position with weapons around him, and then the defensive backfield where he went out and found players like Cam Bynum, who delivered, and Liatu Latu in the draft on the defensive line, who had a pick and delivered. And many of the players and the places where we had been critical of Chris Ballard were those that yesterday showed their best form, and he gets credit for that. But I would like to know what you folks thought of yesterday. I asked yesterday on social media 3 words to describe. But, yes, I know you're optimistic. Yes, I know you're happy. But what area from yesterday were you the happiest, and are you convinced that this is the foundation of what we could be and see as a good year, or did they simply beat a really bad team in Miami? 239-1070 is the telephone number. John, by the way, you said Twin Peaks, is that right?
Greenwood.
The Greenwood Twin Peaks. We will hand it off to him coming up just over 30 minutes. But on the other side, I want your fans' reaction to the Colts yesterday. Whatever it was you observed, whatever it is that you took in from that game and you wanted to get it off your chest, your chances now at 239-1070 next. All right, so your time to opine on the weekend that was, either college or the NFL for that matter. But certainly from the NFL standpoint, yesterday the Colts getting the win. You just heard Matt Taylor talking about the fact that it has been that long since the Colts have started out 1-0, and that was a dominating performance over the Miami Dolphins. Indiana with an impressive win as well over Kennesaw State. Purdue getting a win on Saturday. Purdue's got a big one coming up with USC, which will be interesting. But at 239-1070, the telephone lines, and to Mo we go. It is Mo from Northwest Ohio, who I believe is one of the Colts Hall of Fans. Banner hangs up above at Lucas Oil Stadium. What's up, Mo?
Not a whole lot. Just had just a great weekend. It kind of started out with the 5K. My son, I ran with my son and a friend of his, and James Boyd actually got in it. And finished that up on Saturday morning, and then the game on Sunday, and finished up a really, really good weekend. Optimistic a little bit, just because we got into this with my son's friend about how we couldn't be just jumping off the top of the mountain yet, but I said, you haven't been in our shoes for a while. So
right.
I thought the quarterback play was good. I thought the defense played well, and I thought it was the perfect storm to catch Miami in.
Would you say, Mo, that you were more – what's that?
Go ahead.
Were you more pleasantly surprised with the aggression of Lou Anarumo's defense or the consistency of Daniel Jones's – the way he led the offense?
Consistency of Daniel Jones and how it just flowed. There was a stretch where he, threw 4 incompletions, and a couple of them didn't look so good, but he came back and we went right down down the field eventually later and scored. He came back from that. We haven't had that in a while.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing, Mo. I appreciate it when you talk about the quarterback play, and that's, when Andrew Luck came out of Stanford, one of the big selling points of Andrew Luck was there was a stat of the percentage of scoring drives that Stanford had on drives following an interception. You know what I mean? Something like, I can't remember what the number was, but it was a very high percentage of drives where positive things happened after Andrew Luck had turned the ball over when he was in college. And the reason that was always pointed out was it spoke to the mental fortitude of Andrew Luck as a quarterback and just his ability as a quarterback to bounce back and be a goldfish, to use a Ted Lasso line. And to your point, yes, Daniel Jones, I think with Richardson, we became accustomed to, in games where Richardson didn't get in flow or didn't get in rhythm, the concern of that being the staple throughout. So when Jones, if there were plays where he was out of rhythm, to be able to get back on the horse and be able to ride it. By the way, horse, also Colts and Broncos, both horses. Another layer, somebody pointed out, Eddie. To be able to do that was a positive for certain. Indiana, impressive. We talked to Don Fischer earlier. I think Bill wants to talk IU. What's up, Bill? Bill, you there?
The mountains.
There we go.
Let the mountains tremble. Let cities shudder. Because the big red machine from down in Bloomington, Indiana, is here, and they are for real. And for those of us, and you know my history and everything, my first IU game I went to was back in 1968, and there was a lot of slim pickings in between now and then. But this team is just so much different. And one of the pleasant surprises about Mendoza is his ball handling skills and his ability to orchestrate that offense and do that short passing game. I thought was phenomenal.
Well, they got everybody involved against Kennesaw State, Bill, and I'm saying this playing devil's advocate because I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously, I know that for Indiana, Bill, it's been a long time coming to have. We know what happened last year, and to carry that over to seemingly the same attitude of this year of kind of what the Colts did yesterday, right? Get a team down and then just get relentless and just keep going, right? And stay on task and build the lead from there. They did that Saturday. The question is, and Bill, this is the question I have for you, and answer this honestly. Do you have concern that the schedule between Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State is not going to properly and adequately prepare them for the rigors of the Big Ten that they're going to go right into the deep end when they start out with Illinois?
Well, I'm concerned about it. Obviously, that part of the schedule is extremely tough. But Kennesaw State's quarterback, I thought, was a great athlete. I mean, they had some athletes on the field. They were able to move the ball. They were able to do some things against the defense. But the defense for IU is totally relentless. And the reason why Cignetti is going to be embraced, his expression never changes. He's always walking around the sidelines, even after a really, really good play or a great play, and he always looks like his underwear's too tight. He's always got that. He's always got that kind of scowl on his face and everything, where he's just not satisfied. And I think that's what is carried over to the team. And the one thing about IU going into the meat of the Big Ten season is 3 deep at running back. You got 3 guys.
No, they had a ton of them that ran the ball on Saturday, Bill. My only thing is, because did you see what Oregon did? And again, Oregon's playing. I'm trying to think of who it was that Oregon played on Saturday. They absolutely crushed.
While you think about that, Jake, before he was talking about Kirk Cignetti's underpants being too tight, he mentioned
I think I said that.
Yeah. I thought he said that IU's defense was relentless. Sorry.
By the way, Tom Allen, you know where Tom Allen is now, right?
Uh-huh. How's it going over there?
They were down 16-0 to Troy, was Clemson at home, and I'm thinking to myself, come on, man. Come on. But then they turn it around. But, their defense, Tom Allen, I think, is a good defensive coordinator. But I kept hearing that in my head, the relentless, when they were down 16-0 to Troy at the half. Or 16-3, I think it was, at the half.
Wait, you weren't hearing this?
A 1, a 2. You know what to do.
By the way, Oregon, it was Oklahoma State. Oregon 69-3 over Oklahoma State. They eviscerated Oklahoma State. I have no idea if Oklahoma State's any good this year, but that's a powerful. They destroyed them. So if you look at Indiana's schedule, and Kurt Cignetti knows what he's doing, don't get me wrong. If this were year one, you'd be like, I don't know, but clearly the way last year that they were able to build off of, the pre-conference schedule and carry that in worked for them. But you look at it, it starts out, they go Illinois, and then they have to go at Iowa, and then at Oregon. That's a tough 3-game skid. Skid's the wrong word. That's a tough 3-game stretch, and you hope it doesn't become a skid. I think they could beat Illinois at home, but Illinois, I think, is pretty good. But I think they beat Illinois. Then at Iowa is a little bit tricky because you have at Oregon right after that, and Oregon looks really loaded. And then Michigan State and UCLA. Several people asked, by the way, did I need the bucket hat at the Rose Bowl for the Oasis show, and were they throwing the cups of urine? I thought that was strictly a British thing. And I was up in the stands, and then there were people along on the field itself, and I saw the cups of flying. I didn't need my bucket hat in the crowd, but I think if you were down on the field, you needed your bucket hat. Now, Eddie, if you were at a concert and somebody was throwing the cups of urine, what would your reaction be?
What the?
Would you look like a guy that has your underwear on too tight?
I don't know. Don't know how I'd feel. There was a word I was going to use, but I'm going to use it. But, Jake, we need to get the break.
3 words were what I asked people to use to describe the Colts. And speaking of IU football, somebody went back to the IU football archives to come up with their 3 words about the Colts. I'll tell you what that is next. So when I was asking for 3 words to describe the Colts and your thoughts after one game, somebody wrote in and said, I will tip the cap to Lee Corso and simply say, not so fast. I do think that there's an element of, cautious optimism, right, to take place. But look, maybe Miami's not any good, but the Colts did what you would want them to do, which is if you're playing a not very good team, dominate them for 4 quarters, and they did. That game was never in doubt. Never in doubt. JMV is down at the Twin Peaks in Greenwood, and will be there, of course, for the afternoon. Awesome chance for you to get out, enjoy a cold beverage. Diet Coke's perfectly sufficient, but listen to some sports talk with John. And I assume, John, you're going to talk about the fact that was a pretty darn impressive game yesterday.
I was going to talk about the traffic jam out here right now because people are going to stop in here and the fact that there's construction on County Line. So I'm going to reach a lot of people hanging out the window.
Oh, gosh, that is brutal. That County Line traffic?
But it's good for me, though. I'm just going to wave everybody's ass in here right now.
Yeah, that's cool.
Here's the best part about it. They have old kegs, Jake, that are turned into stools.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
This is awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
You got any old kegs around anywhere?
Do you remember back in the day, I don't know if this is still the case, John, but do you remember in college, maybe this was just a, my group of friends type thing, but people used to think it was cool to, when you would tap a keg, the little keg tap or the top of it, the plastic thing, people would cut a hole in them and put them in their key ring. Like it was super cool to say that you tapped a keg. Was that an Indiana State thing at all?
My thing was buying the keg of the cheapest beer and then ripping off one of the Heineken labels on it and sticking it on the keg and charging people more to pay for it. That was my thing.
That's not a bad call.
That's my thing.
You remember the days of charging people for the party? Like, dude, it's $5, man. You got to pay the Yeah.
Well, we just charge dudes. We charge dudes.
Of course.
In Indiana State, my parties. Well, I mean, unless you're in the Pike fraternity over there, and that's all that were at your party are dudes. But in our parties, we actually got to mingle. We had dudes and chicks, and we charged the dudes to get in because the more chicks you would have, the more dudes you would have, and they would clearly pay whatever to be around some girls.
I can appreciate the business sense of it, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Colts took care of business yesterday, and John, I know that I'm obviously stating the obvious here, but Tyler Warren's a dude, right?
He is a dude. He is a dude. I thought yesterday, Jake, and I'm going to start out the show talking about this. That was so necessary. The term, just what the doctor ordered, that's what the doctor ordered. And it doesn't matter. And we'll talk about this. Miami is craptacular. They're awful. But I thought the Colts did what people around here needed to see because it was a feel-good. Just think about it from this angle, Jake. Defensively, it was like, what in the hell is happening here? They're blitzing.
Yep.
You're dropping a lineman in coverage. I mean, all this mixing up of the defenses. You mean you're not going to go out there like you're playing in the backyard. So the Gus Bradley era feels so far away. So you're detached from that. You had a quarterback that was absolutely mistake-free. You had a perfect afternoon celebrating the legacy and the life at the half of Jim Irsay. And you had a lot of non-believers that were there and some that didn't show. And I thought yesterday did a lot of good to show people that, hey, come back out because this is going to be different. Hell, I don't know if it's going to be different, but I thought yesterday it proved to some folks that, this could be different. Come back out and watch us. I thought that's what people around here, Jake, needed to see.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. And it was, again, it's one game, and it's only 1/17 of what you've got to do over the course of the year, but you would take that as opposed to the alternative. All right, John's up next. John, we'll throw it out to you in just a little bit. All right, have fun out there today.
You got it, brother.
JMV, again, the crossover brought to you by the good folks at Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141. Family-owned business for over 100 years. And John with more of those opinions and, of course, participation as well coming up next. All right, back tomorrow. Stephen Holder going to join us. Also, Scott Agnes. Thank you to Mike Chappell and Don Fischer today. Hope Chap is feeling better as well. And thank you to all of you for listening to Query & Company.